Community is messy, but community, the Christian community, the church, especially in the Eucharist, is where we gather to meet Jesus. We gather to meet Jesus and we see and we touch. Now, how do we do that? We don't have the exact same experience that's presented here where the actual risen Christ is there for us to touch his wounds, but we see his wounds in the suffering and brokenness of our brothers and sisters. We see him forgiving sins and ourselves forgiving sins in his name. When we not only receive forgiveness in the sacrament of reconciliation, but when we heal the wounds of hurt, resentment, and anger that divide parishes, that divide families, and that divide the church as a whole. It's in the community, which is the body of Christ, where all of this takes place, where we touch his side, where we see his wounds, and where we experience his forgiveness and his healing. It's very understandable that people want to stand apart from this. It's kind of threatening. But the fullness of who Christ is the Christ that we meet over and over again in the community gathered for Eucharist, and in that same community as they leave the Eucharistic celebration and go about their week. I touch the wounds of Christ when I visit shut-ins who are in pain, and they tell me that they're praying for the rest of us. I think that's one of the hidden spiritual resources in the church. Shut-in people, most of them elderly, many of them who are in great pain, and if they're not in great physical pain, they're experiencing a great deal of loneliness, and they turn that into a prayer. I encounter Christ in them. I touch his side and his nail marks in them. I also see the wounds of Christ in so many people who experience injustice, whether it's the great social injustices, the mistreatment of people due to race, religion, the abuse of women, women not getting their rights, or whether it's the many personal injustices that get done to so many over and over again. I see and touch him there. And I also see him in the beautiful smiles and the very moving faith that I see in so many people. So I think this gospel account presents us with that challenge. Thomas comes back to the community. He sees the risen Christ, and I think that he sees Christ and understands that he's to see Christ in so many ways in his brothers and sisters. Jesus tells us at the end, "Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." Now, Jesus is not saying, well, if you don't need community, if you just have faith on your own, that's great. What he is saying is that if you believed even before you came to the community and then came in, that indeed is a real blessing. Now, the challenge for us these days is to dive into the messy waters of this often dysfunctional community that we call the church. Certainly not to excuse any wrongdoing that we find there, but because we're people of faith, to challenge the leaders of the church on a grand scale to enter into a time of transparency rather than of secrecy and cover-up, and to have confidence that we can do this without fear because we are the body of Christ. We need not fear shedding light even on the darkness that invades our midst. And on a local parish level and in our personal lives, to do the same thing. To know that we encounter Christ in the Eucharist and in the living body of Christ, which is the church, and to ground ourselves in that and to believe that because he is there with us, we can build an even better and brighter church, one where the love, forgiveness, and healing touch of Jesus is truly present to us. Christ is indeed risen. He lives among us. He lives especially in the Eucharist and in our community. May we encounter him over and over again in so many different ways. May the good Lord give all of you peace, and may you continue having a happy and blessed Easter.